Bad habits sabotage your routine, drain your energy, and slow down your goals. They affect your health, your focus, and little by little, even your identity. And here's the interesting part. You don't just wake up deciding to self-sabotage. But even knowing they're not good for you, you keep repeating them. So maybe the real question isn't, why don't I have discipline? Maybe the question is, what's actually happening in my brain? And more importantly, can you turn this around? So stay with me, because I'm going to show you how bad habits are formed and give you 6 clear steps to finally break the cycle. And if you're new here, subscribe. Every week, we talk about your brain and how to make it work for you, not against you. According to data from America's health rankings, about 72% of Americans have at least one unhealthy habit. In other words, statistically speaking, there's a good chance you're part of that group. It could be sleeping too little, being sedentary, drinking too much alcohol, smoking, or having that complicated relationship with fast food. And the curious part is that most of these people know these habits aren't good for them. So why do we keep doing them? Why, even when we want to change, does it feel like something keeps pulling us back to the same behavior? This question intrigued Wendy Wood, a researcher who specializes in behavior change. And according to a study published in 2024 in Current Directions in Psychological Science, the answer lies in what are called habit memories. In simple terms, associations your brain creates between a context and a response. You repeat an action that brings a reward, repeat it again and again, until it stops being a choice and becomes automatic, real autopilot. And habits are, basically, brain shortcuts. Your brain loves saving energy, so it creates well-established neural pathways, usually accompanied by a good dose of dopamine. And here's an interesting point. Bad habits often survive precisely because they work in the short term. For example, smoking can feel relaxing. Driving fast gives you adrenaline. Fast food delivers immediate satisfaction. The problem is that the brain is excellent at solving the now, but not always great at calculating the bill that arrives later. Because smoking can cause cancer, driving fast can put you in a serious accident, and fast food can wreck your physical health. And when these behaviors become habits, you're no longer deciding consciously. You're just repeating. But here's the good part. Breaking a habit is not about infinite willpower. It's about strategy. First, you recognize the behavior, then identify the triggers, replace it with a smarter response, adjust the environment, seek support, and most importantly, practice persistence with a bit of self-compassion. Because relapses happen, and that's part of the process, not failure. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you today. 6 practical steps to break a bad habit using your own brain in your favor. Curious? Then leave a like, and let's get to work. Now let's get to the root of the issue. What really causes bad habits? The short, direct answer? Stress. And boredom. Most of the time, bad habits don't appear because you're weak or undisciplined. They appear because you're trying to cope with something. Biting your nails, overspending, drinking every weekend, spending hours scrolling through your feed. Many times, all of this is just a quick attempt to relieve stress or fill a momentary void. But here's an important detail. Sometimes that stress or boredom that seems superficial is just the tip of the iceberg. It can be connected to something deeper, like dissatisfaction, anxiety, or accumulated frustration. And let's be honest, facing that isn't comfortable at all. But if you really want to change, you need to be honest with yourself. Now, this is where things get interesting. Because these behaviors don't become habits by accident. They become habits because your brain learns, and it learns fast. Every time you respond to stress or boredom in the same way, your brain registers it as, okay, that worked. And then it starts shortening the path between the trigger and the action, which means that what used to be a choice is now automatic. But here's the good part. If the brain can learn a bad habit, it can also learn a new, better one. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. The name of this ability of the brain is neuroplasticity. In simple terms, it's the brain's ability to learn, adapt, and change based on the stimuli it receives. When a habit is formed, the brain creates a neural pathway, and every time you repeat that behavior, that pathway becomes stronger. Think of it like this. It's like a trail in the middle of a forest. If one person walks through it once, you can barely see the path. But if many people walk through the same place every day, a trail starts to appear. And the more people pass through it, the clearer, wider, and easier that trail becomes. For the brain, that becomes the default path, even if it's not the healthiest or smartest one. And here's the powerful part. If one trail was created, another one can be created too, and it can replace the previous trail. But it's not as simple as just deciding to change, because creating a new path requires repetition. And in the beginning, the new trail is weak, almost invisible. Meanwhile, the old one is still there, wide, easy, and inviting. That's why, when you try to abandon a habit, you may feel discomfort, irritability, or anxiety. The old circuit, already consolidated in the basal ganglia, continues sending automatic signals. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex must work harder to sustain the new decision. Whoa, wait a second. What are these basal ganglia and prefrontal cortex you're talking about, you might be asking? And you're right. I'm sorry, I got a little carried away there. Let's take a quick step back. The basal ganglia are a group of deep brain structures responsible for automating repeated behaviors. They're basically the brain's autopilot system. When something becomes a habit, like brushing your teeth, picking up your phone without thinking, or even smoking, they're the ones that take over. The basal ganglia manage the signals the brain sends to help you move your muscles. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is the part of the brain right behind your forehead. It's responsible for planning, self-control, and conscious decision-making. It's basically your brain's executive manager. So when you try to consciously change a habit, a small internal dispute begins. The basal ganglia want to repeat what is already automatic, while the prefrontal cortex tries to sustain the new decision. These areas literally compete for dominance. And what determines who wins is which pathway you strengthen more through repetition. And in the beginning, that requires more mental energy, more cognitive effort. But with consistent repetition, the new pathway begins to consolidate until it becomes automatic as well. And not because you're weak, but because the brain loves efficiency, and the old path is more efficient, for now. So neuroplasticity isn't about brute force or pure willpower. It's really about strategic repetition, about consciously choosing which trail you want to automate. And that's how you use your brain to your advantage. So, how do you break bad habits? The secret here is combining intention with strategy. Because simply wanting it really badly only works in motivational movies. In the real brain, we need a method. And I'm going to show you 6 steps to do this the right way. 1. Identify the habit. This is the most important step. You need to define which behavior you want to stop and what will take the place of the old habit. It's not enough to know what you don't want. The brain doesn't understand "stop doing this." It needs a "do this instead." For example, if you decide to stop smoking, what exactly should your brain do when the urge appears? Just stand there staring into space? It doesn't know. It received a "don't do this," but it didn't receive a "do this instead." And when the urge appears, because it will appear, the brain will choose what is already automated. It's practical, efficient, almost lazy. And yes, in the case of cigarettes, there's also nicotine, which directly affects the brain's reward system. That makes the habit even stronger. If you'd like, we can dive deeper into addictions in another video. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. But continuing, the point is, stopping isn't enough. Replacing is. If you smoke during work breaks, for example, you could replace it with chewing gum, taking a short walk, grabbing a coffee, or anything that fits the new version of yourself you want to build, combined with the next steps we're about to see. 2. Break down the pleasures that are part of the habit. It's easier to win small battles than to try to win the whole war on a random Tuesday afternoon. A habit is almost never just one thing. It usually comes as a full package. With smoking, for example, there might be the walk to the bakery, the chat with the cashier, the strategic break, the moment with coworkers. It's not just smoking, it's the ritual. These are the sub-pleasures. The idea here is to make a list, yes, on paper, of all the sub-pleasures involved in your bad habit. And for each one, find a substitute. For example, if the pleasure is the walk to the bakery, keep the walk, but buy something else. A coffee, sparkling water, anything that preserves the ritual without reinforcing the cigarette. If the pleasure is the break during work, keep the break, but turn it into a short walk, a few minutes of breathing, or even listening to a specific song. If the pleasure is talking with coworkers, go talk to them even without smoking. Or if being there at that moment is too tempting, choose a different meeting spot that isn't the smoking corner. If the pleasure is the moment alone to think, create another small ritual. Sit in the same place, but with coffee or gum. The brain likes repeated context. See what's happening? You're not tearing out the entire ritual. You're taking it apart piece by piece and reorganizing it. Because the brain doesn't like emptiness. If you remove the pleasure and don't put anything in its place, it protests. And that protest usually ends with you saying, okay, just today. Bad habits serve real needs. So the strategy here is not elimination. It's smart substitution. 3. Discover the triggers and avoid them. A large part of habits comes from repeated associations. What activates yours? Stress? Boredom? A specific place? A person? The smell of food? Identifying the trigger is already half the battle. You might not be able to avoid all of them, but you can decide in advance what your response will be when they appear. Because in moments of stress, the impulse is already activated, and the brain loves a shortcut. A classic example, stopping at the drive-thru on the way home. Over time, you may not even be hungry, but the sign lights up and the brain says, hey, look, our ritual. Another very common example, something sweet with coffee or tea. You prepare the drink and automatically feel like something is missing. Sometimes it's not even hunger, it's association. The drink has become synonymous with sugar. The brain learned that the two go together. Strategic solution? Change the environment or change the sequence. In the drive-thru case, another route, another path. No sign, no automatic activation. In the coffee case, change the pairing. It could be fruit, dark chocolate, or even simply drinking coffee alone for a few days to weaken the association. At first, it feels strange. Later, it becomes the new normal. Sometimes maturity is simply choosing to turn right instead of left, or drinking your coffee, without negotiating with the sweet. 4. Create new rewards. The point was never not feeling the urge. If that were the case, we could just turn the brain off and be done with it. The point is training a new response to the same trigger. Some habits can be reorganized intelligently. If you come home from work tired and go straight to the TV, reorganize the sequence. Cook first, eat well, and then use TV as a reward. This way, the brain starts associating cooking with relaxing, turning that task into something you actually look forward to at the end of the day. You're not removing the pleasure, you're repositioning it. The brain learns through association. If every time you perform the new behavior, there is a clear reward at the end, the chances of it becoming consolidated increase a lot. It can be something simple, a few minutes of leisure, a song you like, a relaxing shower, a special coffee, some guilt-free phone time. The reward doesn't need to be grand, it needs to be consistent. You're basically telling your brain, look, this new path is worth it too. 5. Repeat. This part is simple and difficult at the same time. Because repeating sounds easy until you actually have to repeat it. But this is where the magic happens. You are literally sculpting your brain. Each repetition strengthens the new trail. Each conscious choice is a vote for the person you want to become. 6. Add obstacles. A habit, good or bad, survives because it's easy. Extremely easy. The less friction there is, the more automatic it becomes. So do the opposite. Increase the friction of the bad habit. If you spend hours on your phone before going to sleep, charge it in another room. Simple. Almost silly. But now you have to get out of bed to get it. And many times, that alone is enough for the brain to think, never mind. Small barriers break autopilot, and breaking autopilot is the first step toward taking back control. Habits can serve us, or they can sabotage us. They work like muscles. Whatever you exercise gets stronger, including the procrastination muscle. That one gets huge without much effort. We actually have a video about that little rascal, by the way, if you want to dive deeper into the topic. It's popping up here in the cards. Let's go back to the trail metaphor. At the beginning, the trail doesn't exist. What exists is dense forest. The first time you walk through it, the brush hits your knees, branches slap your face, spiderwebs stick to you. It's uncomfortable. You feel like turning around and saying, "Nope, not today." The second time is already different. You know where to step. Some of the brushes are already flattened. It's still not easy, but it no longer feels like a Discovery Channel survival mission. The third, fourth, fifth time, the path starts to appear, until one day you realize you're walking through it almost without thinking. And what once felt impossible becomes automatic. That's how habits form, and that's how they change. You don't need to become a completely different person to change a habit. Most of the time, you just need to return to who you once were. It's very unlikely that you were born with this bad habit. At some point in your life, it didn't exist, which means your brain already knows how to live without it. It just got comfortable. And of course, you don't have to become the highly productive, enlightened version 5.0 of yourself. You just need to build a trail that's better than the one you're currently walking. And yes, setbacks can happen. But a setback is not going back to square one. It's just tripping over a root in the middle of the trail. You missed the workout, ate junk food, slept too much? That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Congratulations! You just discovered you're not a machine. What defines the outcome is not never falling. It's continuing to walk even after you fall, even if you complain a little along the way. At the end of the day, changing habits isn't about brute force. It's about strategy, repetition, and patience. And sometimes about refusing to negotiate with your just this once. Now I want to know, did this video make sense to you? Then leave a like. It's basically my positive reinforcement on this side of the screen. And drop a comment below. Which habit are you going to start weakening? Or better yet, which new trail are you going to start building? And now, your brain just got new instructions. Try not to ignore them. All right, that's enough wisdom for one day. Go touch some grass, hydrate, be a functional human. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!